30th, 2017. We're here a little early tonight for the FY 2017-2018 budget, and we're going to try to bring this to a close. At this time, City Manager.
So this is really your discussion, but I did provide you a sheet. It's 3 pages, and just after some of the discussions that we've had in the last couple of weeks, and what it would take to, if you're trying to make these options happen with purely a property tax increase. The first scenario is some of the base requests that had come in. If we're looking to hire over the next 3 years, 2 police officers a year, to get a total of 6 additional police officers and the equipment and training that would be necessary to cover them. 6 firemen covered with the SAFER grant, at least partially over the first 3 years, and then maintaining those for the out years with no grant funding.
Can we put this up on the overhead so people out there can see it? Is that okay?
We can.
Thanks.
The only problem with putting it up is I think it's going to be hard for people to read.
Well, let's see.
And then also getting some additional summer nuisance help to the extent of about $20,000 a year. And we had reviewed these numbers at the last meeting, what it would take to accommodate this scenario. The first year would be about a 60-cent property tax levy increase, then close to $1, then a little over $1.50 for the third and fourth year, and then almost $1.80 for the 5th year. Now, I did several different boxes here for you to take a look at with just different combinations. As I've had members of the council ask what ifs if you did different combinations. So the second one is looking at if you did 1 police officer and then did 3 fire officers funded with grant funding, although as Chief Trexel has talked about, getting a SAFER grant for 3 positions is a lot less likely to be a successful grant application than 6. But showing you this example. And also maintaining police staffing at the end of the COPS grant. You know, for those who don't remember, we have 2 positions currently that are funded through a COPS grant in the police department. Our budget is currently set up anticipating that one of those positions that after the funding goes away will no longer be there. We don't have funding identified to cover it at the end. Any of these scenarios where we're talking about increasing police staffing, my thought was that if you're trying to increase police staffing, you're probably wanting to also maintain the staffing that you have for those positions. So making sure that you can cover that funding as well, that need as well. So this second example, with 1 police officer and 3 fire positions, is you can see the tax levies that it would take to do that if you had that SAFER grant. 27 cents, 28 cents, 54, 59, and then 72 cents for year 5. So it increases with each year, just not as significantly as the higher staffing level. And I put in here several different examples for you to be able to walk through. The third one is to have 6 new police officers as proposed in Chief Beard's proposal, with 2 new positions each year, 3 years in a row, with getting trained and equipped, and then maintaining those positions over time. You can see one here that covers for 2 police officers. An example then for 1 officer, an example for 3 officers, it's misspelled, and adding 3 fire department personnel as well. with no, and that's an example with no SAFER grant. 6 firemen with no increase in police staffing. I don't want to go through all these, so, but you kind of get the idea. You
Right.
can kind of look and see, depending on what you're looking at for staffing levels, what it would take for increased funding to make that happen over a period of years. And really, it's still up to you. Do you feel a need to make something happen to have additional staffing in any of these areas? The budget is not built on adding any positions currently.
I think we do need to look at this last page though, too, with the proposed.
So, yeah, I'm
Yes.
sorry, the last page has a couple of pieces on it. As each of those other scenarios talks about the different combinations of what you could do and what it would take for a property tax increase to accommodate it. The last two, just based off of our previous budget session where we talked about some different things that could be cut. If you were to cut the library's budget by 50 cents, as an example, the levy impact, that would offset the need for about 7 cents of any of those property tax increases to do the additional staffing in the other areas. The economic development cut of 20,000 a year would be just shy of 3 cents of impact, relative impact. So those two together can cut off 10 cents of any of the new levy that would take to do any of the scenarios on the other pages, on those other boxes.
Yeah, I just want to tell you where I am on this, and we'll go from there. I didn't find any of those scenarios on my sheet. What I'm recommending, because I think we can afford it and keep taxes minimally increased, I'm talking about public safety being the #1 priority. That's 2 police officers and 1 fireman. I know that's certainly less than what's been asked for, but I think it's a step in the right direction. And then there are other cuts that Jim has gone through, and I support those. Now, I don't know what that amounts to when you add it all up, but that's where I am at this time. I just thought I'd tell the other 4.
Here. 2 police, 1 fireman. Is that one fireman per shift or just one fireman?
1 firefighter.
Okay. Do you have anything else that you want to add before we move forward? Okay. Council, let's just, I say we just jump right in and can see where everybody's at. Bob, you already got the party started, so.
That's right.
And I would just want to say that I probably ought to apologize for barging in on Thursday with these ideas. You know, as I think about it, the more I think about it, the more I think that what we ought to be doing as a council is saying, this is what we want to accomplish. Staff, figure it out for us, how do we get there? I don't know that necessarily we ought to be combing through the budget and picking out 5,000 here, 12,000 here, cut the swimming pool, cut the, whatever it happens to be. I'm personally in a position where I think we need to add that police officer to get that detective position going. And if 1 firefighter would help with overtime, then I'm fine with that. Honestly, guys, I just don't see how we can afford, we're almost at the position where I'm convinced that we don't add anything. We did, if we're set on not increasing taxes, I don't see how you can add something on the if something happens. That's where I'm standing right now. And we need to have a discussion about some other things, but I'm going to hold off on that for right now.
I know where I'm at. I was pretty much figured where I was at, so I'll just go ahead and lay that out there too, and maybe we'll get done a lot quicker than what we thought. I would love to meet the needs of this year's budget, what is suggested to us. That being said, I don't see how it's possible at all. Not that we can't make it happen for a year, we can't sustain it. It's just not possible. Nobody, I mean, I would think that everybody knows that, because as much as I've run into people and talked to people and received emails, everybody pretty much says the same thing. Great ideas and it sounds good. It's not sustainable. It's not sustainable unless we continue to raise taxes. And I'm not ready to do that. I'm not ready to do that. So I know that it would be tough. I know that it would squeeze the departments, but I also do trust the city manager. I'm as is. That's where I am. Tim Scott.
Well, took the wind out of my sails.
Let me
guys.
back up. Let me say this, because I meant to preface what I said. So I think we should always be in tax cutting mode, but I don't think we should cut things just to cut them, to say that we did. I also want to say that too, so some of my decisions after this too may have some people, well, he wants to leave it as is, but you could have made cuts here. I don't believe in just taking something from somebody. I've tried it. It was the wrong thing to do. You don't take something from somebody just to take it. And the point I also want to make is this: when the budgets come to us, when people bring their budgets, Chief Trexler's not. It doesn't come down to 5,000 or 10,000 here. It comes down to men. It comes down to getting officers there. And if he can't do that, we can't do that. So the point of going to a budget and saying, well, let's take 5,000 from them. If we can't take that 5,000 and get a police officer or a firefighter, not that we shouldn't be looking, but, we need to make sure that that's cut. That cut is something that we really need to
But
do.
as we
That's
go
all I
forward,
can
though,
say.
you're saying you would not support a pricing, or a tax increase, right?
For 2016 or 17, 18 budget, no, I don't.
Okay, well, I do, so just so we're.
Okay.
I don't want to.
And I appreciate your openness. Thank you.
You're talking property tax, right?
Yeah.
No other
Right.
means. It's not so much a matter of what I think. I mean, I think I don't think the public safety, the two chiefs have been unreasonable in their request. I'm extremely concerned about the living conditions of our citizens and the working conditions of our staff in those two departments. Will they continue to do the best they can do? Absolutely. But if the best they can do isn't good enough, then what the heck do we do? I think, though, that if we're not going to do anything this year in the way of funding them, I think we need to do what people have asked me to look into. And one of those is find some way to divest ourselves of Community Field. We're spending almost $150,000 a year for a bunch of kids to come here and play ball. And I know it means a lot to a few people in this community, but is it worth $150,000 and 2 police officers or 2 firefighters? We've got a depot we've been in possession of since 1993. We're just starting to make headway, but I've promoted for years that we find some way to privatize that, create an incentive package, and let's get the building developed and get it on the tax rolls and get it out of our inventory. It continues to cost us significant dollars year after year after year. Money like that can be put
I
towards
support that, yeah.
staffing our police and fire department and our nuisance department. The auditorium's losing $400,000 a year. That's kind of the things that we do, but it's a facility that is extremely outdated, extremely inefficient, and I don't know how many years we can continue to lose $400,000 and not do something about it. I think we should look to the private sector or possibly the other government agencies about creating a modern facility. One that would be more suitable for the performing arts and one that would be much less expensive to operate. And whether it's incentivizing the private sector or coming together with the other public entities like Southeastern Community College and the Burlington Community School System.
Could I add this, though? And I think we would all agree that if in fact they're already committing to some performances, and they are, by the way, I checked with the board member, and they are in the process right now of committing for this year and 18. So to me, although we can continue to talk about it. To me, there's nothing we can do about the auditorium in this budget. That's my thought
Well,
anyway.
Yeah,
That's a given, I agree.
I think I've heard that from you three already, but I don't think we should wait until next year at this time
Oh,
to
I
have
agree.
the same
Right on.
discussion.
Oh, I agree with that.
I think we should be talking about this because the people I'm talking to say they want to see something done. We've got to find a way to either cut those expenses or find a way to eliminate it altogether. And it's not, privatizing, it's not a bad thing. Flint Hills Golf Course came up too. And nobody I talked to wanted to see the golf course go away, but they think it may be run better if it were in private hands. And I don't see a problem with that. I mean, we're gonna invest another $120,000 in local option sales tax money to put a new pump house in. And that's not coming from the fees that are being collected. That's coming from local option sales tax that could be put into other improvements in the community or put into police and fire.
Can I say something about that particular
Yes.
item? There's a golf course in Oskaloosa that my team played on that is in that situation. They leased a group to run. It was a public golf course and they leased a group to run it. And so I asked them, this was a couple years ago, the city is still doing the capital projects on that course. It's just the day-to-day operations. And I honestly, at that point, I didn't see how we would be ahead by doing that. Because
So if we'd done it that way, we wouldn't be.
No, you wouldn't be. So we'd have to have some different plan in order for that to
different plan,
work, yeah.
There's a lot of private
Yeah.
golf courses
Yeah.
that are successful. The swimming pool, I've had several people mention that, it's, in the big picture, it's not costing that much to operate unless you look at the number of days that it's open and the daily cost. And it's worth investigating to see what else can be done. And we are going to talk about, with private individuals about putting a cover on that. We'll see where that goes. Other things that were brought up, privatizing the library, wastewater treatment facility, waterworks, trash service, all something that we can look into. In government, we tend to go astray in providing salaries and benefits. And, I mean, I have had people get in my face, and one guy actually yelled because we're paying $18.23 an hour to a part-time person who is only required to have a high school education to work at the desk at the library. And when you look at, as best I can put together, when you look at what we pay in salaries at our library versus other libraries and communities of our size, we're at the top of the pack. And I mentioned before, when we had budget crunch back in the early 2000s, one of the ideas was to go to the police department and say, we're going to eliminate captains' positions. Captains are going to become lieutenants, and lieutenants are going to become sergeants. And I was a little put out by that because I couldn't see people having the same responsibility, being paid less for doing the exact same job. And they said that wouldn't happen. Well, in 2 months' time, we found out that it was happening, and as a matter of fact, we cut a position which required them to do even more. And, but that's one of the methods that's used for reducing cost. But again, there are a number of companies out there that do run libraries, wastewater treatment facilities, waterworks, and trash service. I'll speak up for the trash service. I've talked with a couple of different companies in town, and both of them said unequivocally, we've got a bargain with the guys that run the trash service.
Yeah, that's been looked into before.
But I think there's things that we can do, and that's reducing trash service in the winter months. And, I mean, things like that, we've got to, for the lack of a better expression, look outside the box and see if there isn't a way of cutting some corners and saving some money. And then the one thing I would add to your list, if we still had the list, was and I mentioned it last week, was the parking lot at Main and Valley Street, and I know that's for the police department. But I had a question as whether that was going to be for police vehicles or POVs. And if it was for police vehicles, I can understand, I wouldn't say another word, but if it's for POVs, we've got a rather large parking lot not too far away that can handle that until better times are upon us. But if it's gonna be status quo, I guess I'm not gonna be happy about it, but those are the things that we really have to talk about, and not sit here tonight and say we're gonna talk about it and then not. I mean, I would hope that the direction would come at the same time that we approve the budget, that these things are at least looked at and compared and see if there's any savings. And then we need to find some way to fund those positions for public safety. And I'm not opposed to looking at the possibilities of introducing the franchise fee again. I don't think 4 or 5% is reasonable, but I think if we can find savings elsewhere and combine that with franchise fee, I think we should at least move forward. If the public says no, then I support the public.
I don't. We have a duty to support the people that are here. And for us to say that we're gonna have an election to decide, and they decide no, and we go to the police chief and we go to the firemen and all and say, sorry, boys, the public spoke. I don't buy that. Our job is to make these decisions. And shame on us if we don't. I'm sorry to get irate, but that just bothers me.
But
no
the
end.
chiefs have asked for 6 and 6, and you're saying 2 and 1. That's not fulfilling what their needs are.
I didn't say I could fulfill what they're, all I'm saying is whatever decision we make here has gotta be made by us. That's our job and we should do it.
I think when we're talking about increasing taxes by $1.1 million, it's just like when we build a building.
I
We
didn't
can't
say-
build, we
Where'd
can't
you
build
come
a
up with-
building
no, wait a minute.
without
Where'd you come up with
having them.
$1.1 million?
That's to fulfill the request of the police and fire department.
Oh, okay.
It would
right.
increase by $1.1 million.
Right.
If we have to fund a building, it has to go to the public for a vote, if it's more than $700,000. That's the reason why I don't have a problem with asking the public. And if they vote it down, then not shame on us. Shame on us if we don't find another way to make it happen.
By February 7th? Because, you know, you're bringing up the golf course, I have no problem with it, you're bringing up bees. These are things that we can talk about, but as far as putting a budget together in the next 2 weeks, we better get with it. I mean, we can sit here and argue till we're blue in the face, but we have to talk about things that we think we can do between now and February, what, 7th or 10th, whatever it is? And that's all, that's my only
We've
point.
been
That's what
offered
we're
a
here.
budget without an increase. All we gotta do is approve that and then get on with getting these other things done.
I agree with looking at all these things, because that was one of the, I don't know if
Oh,
you
yeah,
remember,
I
during
agree with
during the
that.
goal session, that's one of the things I wanted to do, was to look at privatizing and outsourcing, but that didn't make our list. But now that you bring it up, you and I can agree on it, and maybe we wanted to get somebody else. So now we can work on it, that'd be great.
Is that true that the budget that we have does not call for a tax increase, right?
Correct.
Correct.
But it doesn't call for,
It doesn't call
Getting
for
anybody with-
addressing any of the staffing requests either.
Right, right.
Councilwoman, let's hear from you.
I just had a couple things. With the auditorium, we obviously can't completely shut it down, but I obviously think we can continue to run it ourselves for a while until we can look into some
Yeah.
other options. Because we don't have a performing arts center that can house and hold enough people for, like Civic Music. They have a huge crowd, and nowhere in town can support that except the auditorium. So as far as looking into the things that we can do, obviously not now for this budget. I don't think there's a lot we can do for this budget for adding any staff, unless we severely cut or raise taxes. And I am completely opposed cutting anything from the library. They asked for a little bit of an increase, but if I can just stop us from cutting anything from them, then so be it. But some of the things about privatizing all of those services that we currently have, I feel like then it is gonna cost the public more. Because they are gonna raise rates or what have you. The reason we offer those services is because we obviously don't make a huge amount of money off these services, but, you know, it's good for the citizens. How would a private library, how would they make money? I'm very curious, actually.
Well, they still collect taxes. They don't charge for the services. We still pay for the services, but they run it on a budget that is less than the budget that the current library gets. They run more than one facility.
Right.
They may have, their director may run 2 or 3 libraries. But I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, without sitting down and looking at the numbers and with, I mean, if it wasn't something that was feasible, then I don't think that others would have privatized libraries, wastewater treatment facilities, or waterworks. I mean, the company that we deal with, American Water Works, or American Water Resources, in the insurance program that they have for repair and maintenance of lateral sewer lines, is the biggest company in the United States for providing private water and wastewater services. They're huge. They have over 700,000 customers. And that's not individual customers, that's includes packages of individuals, so. I don't know if it's cheap or not. I said it's
Right.
something we've
Yeah.
got to look at. I
Looking
mean,
to. I just didn't know, you know, how.
and I don't know if it'd be worth doing it or not, but if we're not gonna know if we don't look at it and try. If we don't look at it and get the numbers, and compare them. I mean, if we're looking at saving $40,000 or $50,000, then there's no point
Right.
in doing this. The only other thing I would say about library services, I think we do an absolutely fabulous job. I've never been in a library that's done better. 3 years ago, when I sat here, I supported not cutting the library's budget at that time. And I wanted to see if, on their own, they could level off and not add more services and not add more programs. And I almost pleaded that Rhonda not do that. And each year she came to us and showed us what she was doing, and it was marvelous what she was doing, but she was adding programs. And this year she stood before us and said she wasn't gonna add any more programs, but she did wanna see the programs that she had grow. And you can't do that without adding expense. I just can't see that happening. At some point, we've got to say, no more, we can't grow anymore there. It's wonderful that we've got a library that provides the services that they provide, and we need to capitalize on that. But right now, I mean, I got a letter, an email, I think we all did, from one gentleman that explained all the problems that they're having with the library and as far as maintenance. And those kind of costs are gonna come back to bite them and us. I mean, they can't go, undone. I mean, parking lot that's falling apart, paint that's falling off, restroom doors that won't close, and other maintenance. And I know the reason is they had to cut their budget, but I think that's maybe one thing that shouldn't be let go on is maintenance.
You good?
No, I'm not good, but I'm ready to move on.
Okay. Everybody get out say what they needed to say?
We just gotta keep putting a budget together, though. We can talk about all
Well,
this.
we're gonna do that, that's what we're here
Yeah.
for, but I just wanna make sure everybody said what they need to say, got their feelings out.
I just want to make sure that the staff has a direction, and I don't think they have one.
They don't.
Staff as far as Jim, or,
As far as like what we want
far as
them to
Jim.
do.
I mean, what have we,
Well,
Yeah.
that's what-
we're pretty mixed here on our opinions about,
well, let's narrow it in. Let's go ahead and try to see if we can reel this in together.
Well,
Again,
Jim,
we
did you
don't-
pull all of your recommendations for budget cuts?
I'm sorry,
Have you pulled all of your recommendations for budget cuts?
have I pulled?
Yeah, you said you weren't, are you introducing those or not?
I would if that's what you all want to do, but I would rather say, I'd rather have us make up our mind and say, we want to add this and this, staff figure out how to do it.
Make the
That's what I'm
recommendation
talking
that they do.
about.
Or we say, we accept what we have, or whatever option we want to do. I would rather see us do that. I think that's the role that as a council, we should be playing.
And that's where we're at right now.
The staff is
That's where we are tonight.
charged with figuring out how to get it done. You know, we can all go through and make comments and say, well, we need to cut this much from here, this much from here. I've said this before, so I'm just repeating myself. Yeah.
Well, I guess for me, it would be, we have something that works right now, and unfortunately, a lot of our ideas to be able to create more staffing it's gonna take longer, obviously, than a week to fulfill or even look through. So, my opinion would be that we go with this, and then we continue to figure out how, in the next budget session for the next years, we can figure out how to make that progress.
Man, I thought we're gonna have to grapple a lot more. You're one, I'm two. I'm accepting the budget as is. I don't see any other way. I don't see any other option. And again, I'm just saying, when we make this budget, when we set this forth, we have to think about this year, and we also have to do forward thinking and think about the year. Can we sustain it? Those things go into the decisions. I accept the budget. I think you did a good job with it, Jim. I wish you could have squeezed a little bit more, because it would have been nice to have more staffing. I'm just saying, it would have been nice if there was some way we could have squeezed in more staffing. I do think it's coming. But I can't sign off on it for this year. I'm satisfied with the budget as is.
I am not. I think public safety is a pretty big issue in this town, and I think in the minds of many people, anything we can do to address that, even though we can't solve it overnight. But I'm gonna have an awful hard time going to the public and saying there'll be no more policemen, there'll be no more firemen. That really bothers me. And I think I've got a lot of support on that point. And granted, I'm not saying we can hire 6 here and 4. I'm saying, though, let's start with 2 more policemen and 1 fireman, and I say we can afford that.
Yeah, but
By
where's
raising
the money-
taxes?
Where's the money coming from? And the one fireman, we can't do it the safer, we would have to do outright.
I don't want
so-
to do it, it is out, safer's out of the picture, Mike, what I'm proposing. I'm saying we hire 2 policemen, 1 fireman, and then we can let the city manager put it together as to what it's gonna cost. And I can tell you right now, it's gonna probably be, unless we use some of these cuts, but even with that, I'm guessing it's gonna be a 2.5% to 3% tax increase. And I know you're opposed to that, but I'm just telling you what I think it's gonna take, and I think that's pretty modest.
I think there's been very few people I've talked to and who've approached me who are in favor of a tax increase.
Oh,
Just,
no, obviously.
I've received
I
actually
mean, they
quite a
would
few
say
emails
no,
that
they would be
people said, yeah.
very,
I've had people tell me that they actually want a tax increase and to bring it on, to
I had 3
fulfill
people
what
come
you
up to me
asked.
after the
I've had a
last
lot,
meeting
but
saying,
I've had
when are
people
you
say
people
that.
gonna face up and do what you have to do? And as one man put it, and I really appreciated that, I guess because he thinks like I do. He said, whether you're talking a city or a business, we have to be moving forward, or we have to slip back. And he said, I think you have an obligation, and the public demands that we move forward to make this community a better community. And if that means that we're gonna say, we will not increase taxes, by golly, and if we don't have public safety and we don't have the fire we want, too bad. I just can't buy that.
See, moving forward and falling back is in the eye of the beholder. We've got some people that say we're falling back with the library falling apart. And you can say, well, that doesn't matter, but again, these are our perspectives, and it's all good and great when people think like me. But not everybody thinks like me. And to be honest with you, I definitely don't want a Burlington that all thinks like me. I like it when we can agree to disagree.
I'll vote for that.
Amen. Let's keep it real, and I appreciate the amens on that. God bless you. I know, I live with me 24/7. It comes down to what's reality. That's what we're here for. That's what comes down to reality. We can sit here and talk what we're supposed to do, what we're not supposed to do, how we're supposed to do it. Sounds all good and great. Bottom line is, again, what is best for the community? What the best decision that we can make now that we can still say next year that, well, we don't have to make adjustments, or we're dangling the carrot where we're offering something, we have to take it away. I'm trying to be realistic. I've looked at the budget. I know what the budget's gonna look like next year. I know money that we're getting that's gonna stop. That the gravy train from the federal government, all that money's coming to a screeching halt. Who's gonna replace that? You know what I'm saying? I mean, I want a great Burlington. I'm not going anywhere. I want it to stay great. I want to make American grapes again. That being said,
Shane, talk to us.
that being said, well, everybody can hear me. That being said, I'm where I'm at, not because of anything personal, not because I'm afraid of anybody. Trust me, I fear God. I'm not afraid of man. That being said, this is where I feel like is the best decision for us this year with this budget, as is. That's my vote. That's where I'm at.
I'm half in agreement with Bob. I think we need to add that detective to the police department. And I think what we should say is, we're okay with this budget, but we want one more police officer to fill that detective role.
That would be nice.
Find us a place to get it. Find us how we can get it. That would be my position.
Tim? He's thinking.
And I'm sorry, Chief Trexel. I'm sorry, I apologize, but
I don't see a point in going there. Repeat what I said, I don't think the Chiefs are out of line in what they're asking for.
I don't either.
And I think we
I
have,
don't either.
I think we should at least make the effort to present a funding scenario to be able to get those officers on and use the funding through the franchise fee.
And I'm not opposed to putting a franchise fee out for a public vote. I'm not opposed to that at all. If that's what we think we should do, then I'm all for that. And as long as the public understands that we are doing this for public safety purposes, I don't have a problem with that. But I don't think we can build that into our budget, assuming that that's gonna happen.
Oh, you better not.
Well, if that's, I mean, that can be a part of the budget, but if it doesn't become a reality, then we don't fill that part of the budget. I mean, if we pass the franchise fee, we can't add the officers without it being in the budget to begin with, so
You can.
we can.
So if you want to build a budget and you're saying that public safety is a primary concern, which
I think it is.
given the status of events that have happened and just your role and how do we make sure that we address them, what's the appropriate response for that? If you think that that's an important thing to do, but you say that we don't have the identified funding stream that we see that can make that happen is from the franchise fee, you don't have to have it in your budget. If you were to go out and have a vote occur, you can amend your budget and then adjust up both the revenue and expenditure side to accommodate that, the revenues and expenditures. That doesn't have to be part of your budget. It would also communicate that the only way that this is gonna be part of the budget is if there is an approved vote.
The only thing my understanding, we can't amend to raise the property tax.
You can't raise the property taxes.
Whatever we set, that's it.
That's the key component. Whatever we decide in the next 2 weeks has to set where our property tax levy is gonna be.
That's locked in.
So that's really the crux. Are you, part of that though too, if you're having a discussion about the franchise fee, if the franchise fee doesn't pass, which is probably a fairly possible scenario. Does that mean that you feel comfortable with the position that you have not taken any other actions to try to address public safety concerns?
Right.
Now, we have added some equipment for the police department to be able to use for license plate readers technology. We have added the dog, the canine unit, to our efforts and what we're trying to accomplish, and we continue to see the reserve officer program grow, and those are all things that help to address on a long-term basis what you're trying to accomplish there, but are you satisfied that that's enough?
No.
So then you have to figure out, is there a portion of what you would like to get accomplished to do more that you're saying, irregardless of whether there's a franchise fee or not, that we think that there needs to be some level of action that's taken? Is that one position? Is that none? I mean, that's, you have to set, where's your level of priorities for how you would do different levels of response?
I'm all in for the one, and we find a way to get that out of this budget.
I'd support that too, Jim. And the other one would be the nuisance position. And I really think that can be funded through fees. That person should be able to bring in enough fees based on what we're seeing right now.
Almost
To
like
pay for
commission.
himself.
Yeah, you'd think that'd come awfully close.
Would that be accurate, Eric, you think?
I've started to look at it, I guess it depends on how you set it, it's difficult, I know that, we don't know what we're gonna collect in a given year, if it gets sent on to taxes, how many you're gonna pay or not. So
Yeah,
it's-
that's true. That's a good point.
and then the portion that we collect in fees is not the entire portion, as we discussed last time, that a lot of that goes to paying the contractor.
True.
You know, one thing I'd like to see us find out, though, is, as you know, I'm against the franchise deal. I want to see 2 police officers and a firefighter. To do that, and take some of the cuts that Jim has already suggested, what kind of a tax increase are we talking about? I mean, could we put something together in the next few days that would compute that?
3 positions?
A 2% tax increase would be $220,000.
It'll be, but the second option on the second page would be 3 officers. That would be roughly what he's saying, right?
It's, I mean, even, it's somewhere between, I don't have any that completely match it, but, on the back, the third page, there's one where 3 firefighters and no grant. That's 3 positions. It's gonna be close. The police department likely would have some equipment and training in that first year that would make the first year a tad more. But that's, looking at about 37 to 45 cents over the first 4 years, 55 cents in the 5th year. The cuts that are down below those first 2, economic development and library, take about 10 cents off of that. You can have a few cuts to, well, that would take it down to what, 27 cent property tax increase. You might be able to do some of those other cuts that were mentioned, but those are one-time pieces of money, so they reduce the first year, but they don't help with any of the out years.
So most people I talk to, they want to know, what is the percentage tax increase? Not in pennies, but in percentage.
So if you do the library and economic development cut below with those 3 positions, about a 27 cent property tax increase is, that's what, about a 2, is that 2%?
2% would be $220,000.
Yeah, so it's just over, not much over, but a little, yeah, no, it's right about 2%
Yeah, so
on
what
average.
I'm for, which everybody's against, I guess, is a 2 to 2.5% price increase, or tax increase, which would give us 2 police, 1 fireman, and take care of some of these other issues. I don't think that's unreasonable. I pay taxes too, by the way. I mean, I don't like to pay taxes. I think I'm a lone voice.
All right, well, let's reel it in. Let's see where we're at. Can we taper this down now, or?
Bring both those scenarios forward, one Jim said and the one Bob said,
Jim has one position.
one position, CID.
One police officer.
Detective,
And
correct?
then also the Carrot's position. Just bring those scenarios forward and what it would cost and what would, to have Eric look further to see if there's possibilities that position can cover itself.
It won't cover itself, it will offset portion of it. And there's just no way they're gonna have enough, the fees that are on that are a couple of hundred per fine. And so it can cover a portion, and then it's whatever's actually collected out of that. So it'll collect a portion of it, but my guess, Eric, is that the actual fines for the service fees that are on top of it, at most will be 5,000 that it adds, and you're gonna have court costs that you're covering out of that. And I'm just ballparking.
We have $100 and $200 fine for first and second offense. Yeah, last year we had 403 abated by the city, so that'd be 4,000 to 8,000, probably 6,000 on average total collected for nuisance fees.
And we had to pay for court costs out of that.
Yeah, and the rest were actual abatement costs that we paid
Yeah.
a contractor.
So you're only gonna see probably 2,000 to 4,000 of increased fees collected from a position like that. It does help to offset the cost of the program, but it's not gonna cover it to have that extra person. But, I mean, I can show those two different scenarios, but you're an extra officer, in general. Is, that, the top of the second page is one officer,
130?
130,000. If you're doing, trying to do the nuisance on top of that, it's taking it up closer to 150. The levy that it would take would be about a 20-cent property tax increase or an offset. And you can, if you're saying that you're wanting to do the 70,000 that's below, you can cover about half of that through those. You can cover another portion of that by, I mean, we talked about 20,000 or so from the heart monitor, but that's a one-year thing. The second year, you're gonna have to find some other funding source to cover. That's where I don't like using the one-time funding to try to make that work.
Why is it 130,000 for one officer?
Why is it more?
Yeah.
Well, part of that that's a guess, but it's, I think that we had that in there, 80,000 for a position, 20,000 for academy, 20,000 for getting another vehicle, if we're getting that vehicle in place. And then, every time you increase your expenditures, and now you're trying to get your cash balance up to 15% of expenditures, now you've increased what that reserve balance is that you have to try to accommodate,
True.
so.
Okay.
I think realistically, just throwing this out there, which I think everybody knows, we're gonna have to look at giving up some type of service.
And your areas that you can talk about for the general fund, close to 55 to 60% of it is police and fire. And you don't wanna doesn't sound like you wanna cut building or the building department, so, you end up then, out of the other areas remaining that you could really talk about having flexibility, and you have limited flexibility with some of these anyway. We've mentioned what you have transit service that you could talk potentially about outsourcing. Whether you could actually save any money is a question. You have some flexibility over whether you have an airport authority or not. You have authority over what you're gonna spend on the library. You have your considerations on the auditorium. You have your rec programming and the pool that amounts to, it's not a large amount, but those are amounts that you could potentially look to cut. In terms of staffing in City Hall, I'd say that you could maybe have one position that would go from that you could talk about going from a full-time to a 30-hour-a-week position, but you would lose service. You would have to change what you're doing with some things, and I don't know that I wouldn't say that it's a good change to make.
I
I
wouldn't
wouldn't
either.
either.
I think that
We're
our
living
staffing
and
in
being in this
terms
place.
of our overhead is fairly low.
Yeah.
But you think about what are some of the other things that we spend money on? Well, we maintain the riverfront. Well, we maintain the parks. I don't think that making cuts in those areas makes any sense.
Let's shutter the riverfront.
Well, I mean, you start thinking about any of these programs that I just mentioned, they're all quality of life things that, do you want to be overboard in not what you spend money on? I don't think you want to be, but you have to be balanced. If your community has to reflect some level of a diversity of what you have to offer. And you gotta I think we need to be careful that as you make decisions about trying to make cuts, there are very few places where you can make programmatic cuts that you're not gonna really significantly impair our ability to provide service. And any of those areas, you can talk about making cuts, but you gotta know that you're gonna lose service. And is it worth it? Then the only other alternative that I am throwing out there is either the property tax increase or a franchise fee. Franchise fee is I would say the likelihood of it passing is pretty small. So that is a property tax increase. And my major concern on a property tax increase is look where we are in comparison to levies of other communities. We are higher than the average. If you look at the communities, our small set of 7 communities that are our like size and really face a lot of the same type of challenges we do, we're fairly close to average.
Yeah,
But you start increasing too much and you put us on the extreme. And you gotta be careful how far you go that direction too, I think. At least understand that there can be long-term consequences of it.
I think that's a good point to bring up, and I'm glad you did bring it up. A city is more than, and I know as important as it is, a city is more than police and fire, it is. And if all you have is police and fire in your city, you're gonna need a whole lot more money for police and fire, probably police more than anything. But it does, and that's what we're trying to do, is find that happy medium. We do need these things. You know, somebody told me one time, well, we don't need the airport. Well, they did a study where they said communities that are successful and businesses look at, well, they've got airports. So then you gotta make a decision. Well, you get people that say, well, I had somebody say, well, you don't need a library. You know, I don't ever go down to the library, but I've got a family that just moved into Burlington. They said, that was one of the biggest draws. We saw the library. Our kids are down there all the time. They love the library. They say it's one of the best libraries they've ever been to. You know, so I just find these happy mediums. You know, some people say, we don't need the pool, shut down the pool, but those kids need something to do during the summer. If we shut down those pools, we need more police. You know, so for $30,000, serious, let them get wore out. Let them go home and sleep it off, you know, till the next day. But we need those things, and it's about finding those happy mediums. I'm just throwing that out there again. Everybody's not gonna get what they want. Everybody is not gonna be happy at the end of this because we've got more than one person living in city Burlington, city limits. That being said, that's all we're trying to do is try to find that happy medium. You just can't go and just shut down services without thinking about the implications of what are gonna happen, what's gonna happen to the community. And I think I'll use this as an example, then I'm done. Somebody brought this up, they said the library, they said, well, we made cuts, and they said, well, we've got to get rid of, we had a maintenance guy, somebody clean up down here, well, we made some cuts and we got rid of this guy. These are the complaints that I'm getting now, dust on top of stuff, and yeah, that's what happens. That's what happens, you know, when there are cuts, that something's gonna get neglected. You know, what are we prepared to get neglected? You know, and can we tighten that belt up and go through another year and tough it out? and see what next year brings us, and we'll see what kind of surprises it's going to come, that are going to come our way, I think we can. I think we can. And I'm asking the people that support me, all three of you, to, that's where my stand is. I think we can, not because I want to, not because I want to. I wish that I could pull the trigger. I just don't believe that's the right thing to do. I think it's irresponsible to say, yeah, let's just raise the taxes to whatever, and let's do this, or to put it on the back on, let's shut down the auditorium. It sounds good, but just think about these things. Again, we've got, somebody brought this up, we got the Apollo building sitting over there, and it's kind of tucked back out of the way. We can't tuck the auditorium out of the way if it's just sitting there, getting old and beat up. These are all the things that we need to think about as we move forward, and so, again, know that you're not going to be satisfied, but not everybody's going to be completely satisfied.
Kind of reached the end of the time for what we have for budget. Were you wanting to have another meeting for the budget this week, or wait until next Monday and either tag on to either have a meeting again at the beginning beforehand, or just as a discussion item during the meeting?
I want to go ahead and knock it out on Thursday personally, but I'm good with what the majority of the
I
council.
want to come back and see where we're at on Thursday.
I won't be here.
Right.
I won't be here.
Got what?
Did you want to meet on Thursday with the other four of you?
Fine with me.
Well, I'd like to have everybody here.
I don't want to meet if there's not all five of us.
You could, we have a Wednesday, we have a 4 o'clock meeting, but we could go at 3 or at 5. At 5, I know you have a council member that has to leave by 6.
I wouldn't,
It's me
I
too.
wouldn't be able to
I
make
teach Bible
Wednesday.
study.
Yeah.
I would be good with Wednesday up until 6. I'm good with Tuesday. I'm good with any day that we can.
Can't do Tuesday because we don't have 24-hour notice. Can't do that.
Wednesday at 3?
Fine with me.
Everybody can be here. I can be
Yeah, I
here.
can be there before.
Wednesday at 3.
You
You
can
can be
here
at when?
Wednesday, you say?
I could, yeah,
You're good Wednesday?
at 3.
Wednesday at 3.
Okay.
Fine with me.
All right. Let's, can I get a motion to close this meeting?
We don't really need it.
All right.
You can do it
Gotta give
yourself.
somebody the opportunity. Anyways, we're gonna close it up, and we'll take a few minutes.